Hello guys, we are on the third game in the Weakening the King's Defenses series. This game is played between Kat Katitov and Golombek in Prague 1946. This is a Sicilian defense dragon variation. The game goes e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4 cd4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 g6, now knight f3, f3 and bishop g7 and bishop e3, castle shot and queen d2, knight c6, long castles, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop e6, g4, a6. Here better was queen a5. Uh, here after this move, white obtains a before long an irresistible attack. White controls more space, but black has compensation in his mobility on the queen side, where he has available such moves like queen a5 and b5, coupled with an open c5 and a well placed bishop at e6. Nevertheless, it is clear that due to the weakness created by g6, the balance will weigh heavily in the white's favor, as he will have the opportunity of opening the h file by the advance of h4 h5 followed by hg6. Let us examine further course of the game. Here h4. Speaking generally, black has a choice of two methods which he can apply against the advance of the h pawn, other than simply ignoring it. Here it is a question of whether the cure is worse than the illness, for either method is wholly inadequate. Here black can play h6 for the move h4. This move is played in order to play g5 after h5 by white. But this move weakens the king side further and allows uh, here g5 and here if at all bishop takes f6 is played, uh, it is less clear although it wins a pawn. Black here obtains excellent dark square control in return. Here here knight h5. h6 after white plays here g5, then knight to h5, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, g takes h6 and king h7, f4 is also very good. g5, if at all h takes g5 is played, then g takes h6. No, I mean h takes g5, h takes g5, Knight to h5, f4 with a tremendous attack for white. So here if at all h5 is played by black in reply to h4, this is refuted by bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, g takes h5, g takes h5, rook g1 check, king h7 and bishop to d3. So here black actually played in the game the move b5. He ignored the white's move, and after knight d5, uh, here unexpectedly white delays his advance. He could have played h5 to be followed by h takes g6, but first he undertakes preparatory maneuvers so that he can open the h file under favorable conditions. Now bishop takes d5. This move is practically forced. White threatened to weaken the d pawn by an exchange at f6, while black could evidently not move his knight away, as the exchange of his g7 bishop would seriously weaken his king's defenses. Now e takes d5, queen c7, and now h5, rook a c8. Here g takes h5 would definitely not lighten black's burden. After g takes h5, then now threatening h6, or after bishop takes f6, or even white can go like this: bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, rook takes h5 would also win. So here after rook a c8, h takes g6, f takes g6. It is normally better to recapture with the h pawn, but in this particular instant it would reduce black's already slim chance of successfully defending himself. And if at all h takes g6, then bishop to d3, so that the queen can maneuver freely. Now rook f d8, rook to h3, king to f8, and then rook d h1 and king to e8. The only way to parry the mate threatened by rook h8 check. Now g5, knight h5, bishop takes g7, and knight takes g7, rook to h7, and now if knight f5 is played, then bishop takes f5, g takes f5, and queen to d3 wins. If at all knight h5 is played, then rook 1 takes h5, g takes h5. Now bishop to f5 is deadly. White has much better game because he controls the h file, where his rooks will threaten vital points in black's position, while his other pieces also have a good range of activity. So now black played f takes g6, and now bishop d3, attacking and defending at the same time. Now rook f7. Now queen to g5, knight e8. Uh, here here instead of knight e8, queen b7 would be better, because after bishop takes g6, h takes g6, queen takes g6, uh, white has various threat, especially like g5, uh, and if at all king is played, even then now g5 is played. Here after knight e8, rook takes h7, king takes h7, queen takes g6, and then after king g8, rook h1, knight f6, bishop takes f6, and now after rook f6 there is rook h8. So much for the weakness created by g6, which is more awkward in the absence of the g7 bishop, and especially so if the opponent still has his dark squared bishop. In these cases, an advance of h5 together with the forcing open of the h file is to be expected. Uh, in almost every case where the conclusion is that there is in fact a weakness resulting from g6, even if there is still bishop on g7, the plan indicated by h5 and the exchange of pawns at g6 can be adopted. However, it is necessary before embarking on this maneuver to take the following factors into account. Frequently, it is a necessary preliminary to play g4 to provide against the h5 move by black. The parry h6 followed by g5 is generally doubtful. This does not secure black's formation, as there is still a possibility of opening lines by playing f4. The exchange at h5 usually aggravates the defender's difficulties. It is of great importance for white to force the exchange of black dark squared bishop, as this piece plays a big part in the defense. This is usually accomplished by playing bishop to h6. In this game, the opening of the h file is decisive because white has castled on the queen side and black on the king side, where both players have castled king side. Uh, uh, the advance when both players have castle king side, the advance of the h pawn is hardly feasible against g6. So thank you all guys. I hope this would have been a good illustrative game. I'll be meeting you in the next game.